Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining overview of Springer eJournals and the platform features for UMP. I'm Mabel Tang, Key Account Director for Asia Pacific. On the line with me today is my colleague, Kent Yep, Licensing Manager of Malaysia and Brunei. The webinar today is the collaboration with the UMP Library, and we would like to thank them for their great support in making the webinar available to all of you. And before we start, I have several housekeeping notes. Yeah, everyone is muted during the whole section to avoid any background noise and so as to achieve the best audio effect and for recording purpose. So if you have any question, please type in the chat box and the speaker will answer at the end of the presentation. Please make sure your audio is properly set and choose either computer, audio, or phone. At the end of the talk, when we close the webinar, there is a short survey. Highly appreciated if you can fill the survey and let us know how do you find the webinar and what topic you would like to hear in the future. And there is an e-certificate attached in the following up email, which will be sent to you tomorrow. And the recording and the slides will be shared by the UMP library later. So without further ado, I pass it to Kent. Thank you, Kent.
Thank you, Mabel. Hope you all can hear me. Nice to see all of you today. Selamat pagi kepada semua. Harap semua sihat. Thank you for joining our session today regarding the overview of SpringerLink, a platform resource that's available kepada semua pengguna-pengguna perpustakaan UMP. So let me just begin with some slides. I hope you can see my slides. So basically, today we will be talking about the SpringerLink database. Some of you may be familiar with this database itself. If you are not, I guess that's why you are joining today. And I will take this opportunity to run through you what is available, apa yang di-subscribe oleh library, what you can access, how to access it correctly, and also how do you maximize some of the features on the platform itself. So a little bit about the platform before we begin and what is specifically available kepada semua pengguna UMP. First of all, actually as a database itself, it contains millions and millions of online peer-reviewed resources that are published online first on the SpringerLink platform under the Springer Nature portfolio. So actually under the Springer Nature portfolio, we have several databases. One of the main ones is definitely SpringerLink, which is brought to you by your university library. In terms of specifically what is subscribed by the library, you have actually access to over 970 subscription-based Springer, Palgrave, and other society-based journals with varying years of content. Typically, biasanya merangkumi journal artikel journals daripada tahun 2021 sehingga 1997. So from year 2021, current year means the latest published articles, the most up-to-date information, all the way to 1997, or if there is a first issue included within that period, then up to the first issue. On top of that, in terms of journals as well, there are over 600 open access titles available to anyone, regardless of affiliation to the university. And these are, like I said, open access titles. That means they are fully free to use, free to download, and they are covering from all sorts of subject areas. SpringerLink doesn't only have journal content, but it also has what you call it ebook content. And ebook content that is available to you at UMP includes 2,500 over titles, of which 1,500 of those are actually open access as well. In terms of subject coverage for all the type of content on SpringerLink itself, you have physical sciences like engineering, biotechnology, medicine, etc. Mathematics, physics, but also on the HSS side, things like business, economics, religion, humanities, language, dan yang lain-lain. Tetapi saya rasa kepada pengguna-pengguna ataupun student atau staff dan researcher daripada UMP, probably you are more interested in the STM side, I believe. considering the focus of the university is more on those areas. But I'm sure there are also as well some of you that may be coming from some of the social sciences background as well. So maybe things like business and finance and economics. So what SpringerLink, I would definitely say, is very applicable to most of you on the from UMP. It just depends whether or not you are able to find the right content. Moving forward, so what we'll be discussing specifically about today is actually three main topics, or actually the agenda is about three different items. The first of which is authenticated access and staying connected. That means how to log on, macam mana nak log in dengan betul, dan selepas dah log in tu, macam mana nak pastikan sama ada akses kepada semua konten yang disubscribe oleh library adalah dapat digunakan dengan sepenuhnya lah. Alright. The second one is the platform features. That means what are the functionality, what are the features on the platform itself, how do you maximize the utilization of it. But I think, personally speaking, platforms like SpringerLink are generally very easy to use. They are designed in a way where even if you did not attend a training session like this today, after playing around with the platform for a few minutes, you should be able to maybe use 80–90% of the functionality of the platform itself. Maybe you will encounter one or two stumbling blocks, but eventually you will still be able to utilize the full, almost the full functionality. But I will be sharing with you maybe that little bit 10% tips on how to make sure that you don't encounter problems or situations where you may think that, for example, you thought you could have access to a certain type of content, but actually it is still behind a paywall, and what are the reasons for those. And then lastly is we will talk a little bit about the detailed or customized searches. So on platforms seperti SpringerLink ini, most of the time you go on there is because you're searching for content related to your particular subject area. So how do you do the searching? What are the ways of doing so? And then how do you fine tune it using things like operators, certain keywords, removing certain terms that will provide any kind of that will ruin the results that you get back. And how do you make sure you do your searching in an effective and efficient manner? So before I jump to the actual platform itself, I just wanted to highlight. So I just did this quick search, this quick study today. And what I found is amongst UMP users from 2021 that are already using the SpringerLink platform, the majority of the users are coming from perhaps the chemistry and material science community, which is, I think, quite true. UMP has a very strong, very strong faculty or school that is involved in chemistry and material science related. I think UMP, if I'm not mistaken, is one of the pioneers of nanotechnology, or one of the leaders of subject matter of nanotechnology in Malaysia. Then is followed by engineering, which is again one of the core subjects of your university, followed which is the biomedical and life science, then computer science, earth environmental science, medicine, quite surprisingly, but in this situation, it could be the the technology aspect of medicine, but it's just categorized as a medicine category in terms of the nomenclature of the types of resources that we utilize. And then we can start to see a little bit of the social sciences aspect coming up here, where we can see business and management and education. And then the last two of the top 10 subject areas are physics and astronomy and the energy sector. So these are the top 10, most looked for, most popular subject areas of content that have been searched by previous users so far till today from UMP itself. So if you are a representative from any one of these subject matters or subject areas, then hopefully I will be actually taking some examples that we'll be utilizing today on the platform from these top 10. And I'm sorry if you are not from that area itself. It's okay, don't worry. Whilst you are watching this training, you can always shadow what I'm doing on my screen, and you can also, if you're using your computer at the same time, you can also play around on the features. Just change the subject matter and you'll be able to do what exactly I do, but more specifically to your area of interest. So let me just stop sharing the slides, and then I will jump straight to the what you call it, the platform itself. 1 second. Okay. So I hope you can see my screen. Mabel, can you just confirm you can see the browser here?
Yes, I can see your browser.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you for that. Okay, just minimize this. All right. So firstly, the first thing, as I said, or the first agenda for today's training is actually making sure that you are accessing your content correctly, going to the platform correctly. And the first step to doing so is actually by visiting the university library website. So this is UMP library. This is the home page. And depending on whether or not you are accessing, you want to use the SpringerLink platform, either if you are in campus or outside of campus. So there are two ways of doing it. What I mean is, if you are in campus, there's one way of doing it. If you're outside of campus, then you have to make sure you use the off-campus access. So first thing to do is go to under collections. There's a drop-down menu. If you're not familiar with this, I'm pretty 99% sure you are. Go to e-resources, and then under there, there's online databases. Click on it. If you scroll down, you go to section under S. SpringerLink is spelled with an S. Scroll to the bottom, you can see our the link to our platform over here. So I think the library has very graciously provided a list of the subscribable journals here, the 970 that I have mentioned. But if you want, you can click on that. I think it's just a simple list. But the more important links are actually here below. So there is this direct link and the off-campus link. So if you are using the internet connection, the Wi-Fi from any of your Wi-Fi connections within the university, so I mean using the Wi-Fi from the library, from the faculty building, etc., you should be able to log into SpringerLink by using the direct link. You just click on it, it will actually redirect you to the platform itself. Now, if I go back one step, right? If you are outside of campus, that means you either, and this can mean physically or even virtually in that aspect. For example, if you are in your hometown, like myself, I'm at home at the moment, not in the office or not in campus, then you should use the off-campus access link. But if you are physically in campus yourself, but your computer is not connected to the university's Wi-Fi, the library's Wi-Fi, for example, you're using your mobile device or your mobile data, right, through your own SIM card, it will still have to use this off-campus access connection. So what this does is actually when you key in your username and password, and I do not have your details, only you would have your own unique one. And if you're not sure of your ID and password in this sense, always proceed to find out from your friendly librarians. I'm sure they will be able to help you to figure out what is the problem with if you are having trouble accessing your off-campus access. Okay, so once you put in your username and password and you click enter, you will then also be redirected again to the platform itself. Right? If you have followed all of those steps, regardless whether you are doing it from inside campus or using the off-campus access, when you come here, there are two things that you can look for to ensure that you have accessed the platform correctly. You have done the correct steps to reach here thus far. All right. The first thing to do is actually to look at this little box. Here, to me, in my screen, it looks like purple in color. Maybe to some people, it looks like magenta or slightly reddish or pinkish. So if it is in this color, it means it's one hint or one clue that you have accessed the platform correctly. If it is in orange color or a bright, yellow or a very dark brown, depending how I guess your eyesight is, and then it tells you that actually somewhere along the way something has happened and you have not completed the logging in process correctly, and there is an issue somewhere. The second clue is at the bottom. You can see that at the bottom there, if you are accessing through your off-campus access or your university Wi-Fi, it would say to you that University Malaysia Pahang. So it's trying to tell you that access is connected via the University Malaysia Pahang, profile or account on SpringerLink itself. Mine will say Springer Nature because I'm using my own company's virtual private network, VPN. So it says Springer or Nature, etc. So anyway, so if you see those two things, as I mentioned, if it shows up correctly, purple color box and also UMP name at the bottom, what you can then be confident about is that you've logged in correctly. Furthermore, now with the advent of COVID-19 and a lot of us who had been working from home, studying from home, doing our literature review from wherever we are at that time, we have also made an effort. I mean, the publisher ourselves, Springer Nature, has also made an effort to create something called persistent access. So persistent access is actually just some coding, basically to help your browser remember that the first time you have logged in correctly, all right, every time you come back to the website itself, you will still be recognized as the authorized user as long as you did the first time you logged in correctly. And if you do not, for example, clear your cache or remove your, your search history on your browser, and it depends from browser to browser, of course, then you will continue to have that persistent access, and you do not necessarily have to go through the trouble of logging in, from the University Library website again and again and again. But to be safe, and I think this is a good, good public announcement on behalf of the library, it is always better to just log in through the University Library website in order to make sure 100% of the time that you do not face any frustration when logging in, to ensure that, okay, every time you follow the steps that I just showed you, you can be 100% sure that as long as it is a subscribe or open access content, you will be able to download or read the full text, means the full whole document without encountering a paywall whenever you reach a certain material. Okay, so that is just that itself is we're done with agenda 1 of today, which is logging in correctly and making sure that you are staying connected wherever you are. Now we go to the features of the platform itself. Okay, so here, as you can see on the front on my screen, we are looking at the home page of SpringerLink itself. It's not a very fancy or very difficult to understand website. It's divided into about 3 main sections, I can say. First, we have the top section, which is, you can see there's a search bar, there's a home button, you can say. All right, there are some quick links over here for home, books A to Z, if you want to see the entire list of all of the published books and journals from alphabetical order. If you want to see what are the videos, and there's also a quick link for the librarians to get access to resources that can help your users, such as user guides and etc. etc. There is the sign up and login page. So do not be confused. Tak payah, sebenarnya tak payah untuk nak login lagi sekali. This sign up or login is basically to create your own profile on SpringerLink, so your own personal profile. It is not necessary, dia tak semestinya diperlukan for you to create your own profile in order for you to utilize the subscribed content on SpringerLink. But if you wish, for example, to maximize the functionality, some of the specific functionality, for example, if you want to follow, after you've done a lot of customized searching and you want to save that customized search, and you want to be notified of future additions to that customized search, you should create a profile on SpringerLink in order to be notified through your email. So it's very simple, actually. It's not a very difficult step. If you don't already have an account, you just need to put in your name, a working email address, and a password itself. You don't even have to take the effort to do a email verification step. So it's not necessary. So immediately after you click create account, your account is created immediately. All right, and then it is also, through your profile, will be automatically associated with the UMP's account. So that means, again, if you are using, for example, today you are logging in using your computer. You created your profile using your computer after you have logged in through UMP Library website. Tomorrow, you will want to use your handphone or your tablet or a different computer to log in. You can go straight to the SpringerLink platform, enter your details of your account, and immediately once you click enter, you will already be automatically associated with the UMP Library profile on SpringerLink. So that is some of the additional benefits of creating a profile. Tak semestinya diperlukan, it's not a must to have, just so that you can access content, but in a way provides an additional functionality or ease of convenience for you to maximize the usership of the platform itself. The next thing I can say that this is always, of course, make sure it's in English, not in Deutsch or Dutch, sorry, German. And then always utilize the academic edition instead of corporate, because the layout is slightly different for corporates, where instead of browse where you can see that there are certain disciplines listed here. For the corporate section, you will be actually listed as industry sector. So you can have like aviation, maritime, etc., etc. Content is exactly the same. It's just the way that they are classified is slightly different. Next, the second major portion of the front page is actually this browse by discipline table, I can say, where there are quick links where you can jump immediately to searching for content based on the subject discipline. There are total, I think, 21 here, if I'm not mistaken. And if you do not see the subject area that you are more interested in or familiar with on this 21, it does not necessarily mean dia tak ada dalam SpringerLink. It's just that, of course, it's not possible to put every single individual, very unique subject or disciplines laid out here. If not, it will be hundreds and hundreds long. So what our website designers have done, and through the support of the editors, is to classify subjects based on the main subject areas, and we have identified 21 of them, spreads across all the different STEM and also HSS subject areas. We go to the bottom a little bit, you can see this is a live table of the total number of individual resources, or think about it, of individual papers that are published online first on SpringerLink. And this number grows on a daily basis. You check today, right now it says 1456478. You check back maybe a few hours later, this number might go up. You check tomorrow, the number will definitely go up. This is because the Springer, practices an publish online first policy, and all of our content immediately is online on either our SpringerLink platform or some of our other platforms as well. Okay. The majority of the content that is available on SpringerLink, as you can see, are journal articles. I think they make up about 50% in total of all of the individual papers found on SpringerLink. The rest are followed by chapters, which come from books. So these are chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc., from different books. There are also conference papers, and conference papers, as I will show you later, if you're familiar, if you've ever attended a scientific conference where you had to submit a paper for presentation or a poster, for example, they are also published on SpringerLink through the individual book series, and they will look like book chapters when you look at it on SpringerLink, but they are actually classified as conference papers or proceedings for that matter. The next one below, as you can see, is reference works entries. So reference works are like big encyclopedias where you can A has A this, A that, A this, A that. Everything that starts with the letter A will be listed from alphabetical order all the way until Z. A major encyclopedia can have anywhere between maybe 5 to 10 to 20 volumes of the same encyclopedia. Again, followed in the content inside it laid out in alphabetical order. The next is actually protocols, although in terms of relative size compared to things like articles and chapters, is very small, but there are actually 64,000 individual protocols. So for those of you who are from more the physical sciences side, particularly from the areas of the likes of chemistry, biology, microbiology, biomedical and life sciences areas, you will be interested in protocols. So these are basically lab experimentation procedures that will basically tell you, okay, in order to do this experiment, you need this materials, and for you to conduct the experiment, you have to add reagent A with reagent B under condition C for D duration, and then you will get a reaction F, for example. So those are what protocols are, and very useful. I think Springer, through the Springer protocols and methods collection, has one of the largest collections of individual up-to-date and peer-reviewed as well experimentation protocols in the world. And then we have also a very small but new and growing collection of videos. So videos are basically the interpretation of the author of a particular book that is published on Springer as well. But instead of communicating the message through text and images. The author is actually explaining the content through a video, and in most cases there is a demonstration of how to do a particular technique, what it looks like, and sometimes some subject areas, particularly in areas of medicine and computer science, so things like coding, how to code, for example, is better taught in a video format, which I'm sure a lot of us are very comfortable with, especially in today's age where we can just go to anywhere, for example, like YouTube, to learn how to do something. So similarly here in our video collection. The next and last, we call it final major section of the homepage, is actually this one on the center to right hand side, where we can see there are quick links as well, but instead of browsing by individual subject areas, we can browse by content type. So for example, if we are only interested with just journal itself or books, etc., you can immediately use these quick links to start your search that way. So instead of going by subject area, you look for content type and then you narrow it down further. I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I saw someone who raised their hand. If you would like to unmute, I guess, or raise a question, or put the question in the chat box, you can feel free to do so. Please treat this as a very informal session. Or if you do not understand something or want me to stop somewhere, just alert Mabel or myself. We'll be able to just stop right there and answer questions. So I would like to try and do this kalau boleh, seperti mana kita semua duduk dalam satu bilik sekarang, and then I'm trying to explain this in front of you. So no problem. Feel comfortable to just say, hey, Ken, I have a question. Can you repeat something, etc. Just go ahead. But if not, then I'll just continue. So you can also use those quick links, as I said, to jump from one type content to another. And then lastly, I'll explain what these little images or the front covers of these different books and journals, what are they for? If you are logging into SpringerLink at the moment using your own computer, for example, you may see it's most likely you are looking at a very different list of featured journals and featured books. This is because the platform, through very basic artificial intelligence, essentially, is studying your behavior or your usage behavior pattern. So whenever you have, for example, spent a long time, let's say an hour, 2 hours, trying to read content from a certain particular area of certain particular type, the platform tries to identify that as okay, you are interested in these kind of things or this kind of content. Whenever you come back to the homepage, it then suggests to you, these are some of the journals or books that you may be interested in based on your history of searching. So of course, it's affected by your browser history. So if you've logged in for the first time, then you'll probably just see a very random list. If you have accumulated a lot of hours playing around, moving around the platform, and a lot of your searches has been very specific, then what you will get is a very specific list of featured journals or featured books for you to read. They do not necessarily only suggest to you content that is subscribed, but it just suggests every single content that is available on the platform itself. So you may sometimes encounter a situation whereby you say, okay, featured journal, click on it. Interesting. Something is related to what I was searching previously an hour ago, but it may not be subscribed, and therefore the full text content might still be hidden behind a paywall in that situation. So just be careful about that. Okay, so this is the gist of the homepage. So like I said, main section on top, left-hand side, browse by discipline, and then the middle or center right, that's where you have the browse by content type and some of the more featured content. So now let's go deeper into the platform itself. And then ultimately, I'll guide you all the way to what a journal looks like, a journal and journal article looks like, and also what a book looks like from there. Then we'll take a step out, try a different way of searching, and then we'll arrive back at the same place. So just to give you an idea of how far in you can go and what are the different things you could get to that point, right? So the whole purpose of a website like this is basically just to look for content. Okay, so very typically, let's start with the search bar function. So what this search bar function is like the same like how you would use a Google search bar. But my advice, number one, if you are a student, for example, and you are using this platform for the first time, try to limit your keywords and the term I emphasize here is keywords, to try to limit it to between 3 to 5 at every time you search for something. It's because the algorithms that are baked into the search bar function, right? If you put in an entire sentence, for example, say you have your thesis title, and your thesis title is often 1 to 2 to maybe even 3 lines long as a hypothesis, with often includes things like operators. So what are operators? Operators are things like and, or, near, that, is. These kind of words may mess up your results of your search when you are using the search bar feature. So unlike in Google, for example, where you can actually key in an entire question and they have an AI where they will try to answer your question by understanding your question, through machine learning, and then try to spit out the answer to you based on what is available on the internet. It is slightly different than how that works on SpringerLink. So what SpringerLink can search is only within SpringerLink itself. It doesn't go beyond outside of the platform. So when you try to input, copy and paste an entire hypothesis onto the search bar, what you will get is a bunch of mumbo jumbo mixed results, and often in very, very large numbers that become completely irrelevant to what you're searching for. So again, limit your search keywords to between 3 and 5. And what you can do is to do the search multiple times using different keywords, where you eventually will be able to save your searches and then to customize it even further. So that's the first tip. So I think as we saw, the number one subject area being interested by UMP authors is the chemistry and material side. So maybe I will just take something like nanotechnology, and then I will use the term graphite. So I'm not a material scientist in any way, so I'm not a subject matter expert in this way as well. So I just wanted to take some examples. So when I put in the term nanotechnology and graphite, and I click enter, so what actually is returned to me is 34,063 different we call it documents, if you can think of it that way, that has the term nanotechnology and graphite together inside that document. Right? You can also do the same thing, if I'm not mistaken, by using a comma. It should be the same, as you can see, right? But if you change it using a different operator, so we use the term or, for example, as you can see, the number has expanded in terms of the results. This is because, again, the operator has an effect. So we use things like is, and, or, near, etc. I'll show you a list of different operators that you can utilize to maximize your functionality. But it has a major impact on how you type it and in the sequence that you type it, for example. So one thing I would advise to anyone who is using a platform like SpringerLink, it doesn't matter if it's SpringerLink, Wiley Online Library, Science Direct, anything, right? When you're looking for something, you need to narrow your results from big to small. That's how you funnel your search, right? From general topic all the way to narrow to a point where it is feasible for you to be able to read very briefly the results that are given. So maybe anywhere between 50 to 100 results, for example. That is something that's feasible. Of course, it depends on your subject area. If you're in the hard sciences, that could be it could be that the 50 to 100 is a very small fraction. You maybe need to read more. But if you're in, for example, let's say paleontology, maybe there's not as many content out there in that area, then it's important for you to narrow it down to a more feasible, smaller number. Then you know very well for sure that whatever is returned in terms of the results is very specific to what you are looking for. Because, I mean, to be frank, for example, it is not feasible for me to read 512,000 individual documents to read, just even though I just want to read the abstract, for example, to identify betul ke tak this article ataupun buku ni dia sesuai dengan apa yang sebenarnya yang saya cari. So you have to play around with that. Going back to the more I think easy to explain option, I'll just use N. So of 34,000, right? The next thing you should do is to uncheck this box, include preview only content. Kenapa? So whenever that box is checked, it means that it will return to you the results that include all of those that are not subscribed and not open access. That means you will not have access to the full text document. Kamu tak akan dapat keseluruhan buku tu, artikel tu tersebut kerana ia berada dalam behind a paywall, right? You can still see the abstract, and sometimes depending on the journal or the article itself, you may see some results or whatever, but often you can't see the entire text, right? And that may be important to you as well. But if you're just doing an abstract search, then you can leave it on. But if for most cases, I would say uncheck that, then the number of results should continue to get smaller, right? So although I have mentioned I showed you in my slides earlier, UMP has access to 970 plus journals plus 600 over open access on top of that. That is still not everything, right? So if you uncheck that box, this include preview only box, you will narrow your results even further. The next step to do, I would say, is then play around with the filter bars, the filter function on the left-hand side. So for example, if I want to only read journal articles because I'm interested in the state-of-the-art, most up-to-date information about the keywords that I'm searching for, then more often than not, you would have to rely on journal articles, right? Then in terms of disciplines itself, you have two different search bar here, one for the major discipline and also the sub-disciplines. So if we click on the see all of the refined by discipline section, you can see that there are 2 pages here. I think quite a lot of, okay. So on the far end is probably social sciences and economics, but in the beginning, I mean, more higher up, you can see there are more information related to material science itself. So I'll just filter material science for this particular exercise. Then I go to the sub-disciplines. And within the sub-disciplines, this is probably where if you had not seen the subject area that you're familiar with, the term there, you might most likely find it here in the sub-discipline area, where you can dive down really specifically into certain terms. And maybe I'm just going to take, for example, biomaterial. It's just an example. Okay, so I've narrowed, just by doing that, I've narrowed my search all the way from 34,000 to about 2,692 results. That is good. We've made significant progress, but still, I think it's not enough because it's not possible again for me to read all 2,692, even if I'm just reading the abstract result. The other thing you can do is probably play around by the sorting. So you want to, based on relevance, that means most accurate to the keywords that you're using, or you want to look at content based on the date of publication. So I would say for most people in the STEM side, you will probably, it's often very crucial to not only match relevance, but also date of publication. So you probably could do that. The HSS people might argue, maybe the older content, or trying to figure out who just first discovered a particular policy, the first one to coin a particular phrase, for example, who established this thought of mine or whatever, then maybe looking at the oldest first. So hence there are use cases or reasons for these particular functions, right? So once you sort that, you can even, for example, play around with the start year. That means from what year to what year you want to look at. So when I was in university in the past, my lecturers used to often tell me, I don't want to see anything in your reference, in your literature review beyond 3 years. That's just because in what I was reading in university, biomedical science at that time, my lecturers were telling me more often than not, anything that's beyond 5 years, for example, could be completely irrelevant today based on the way that the technology of the time at that time has been moving and how fast discoveries were made every day. So even more, especially in areas like, for example, computer science or in medicine today, with the onset of pandemic and whatnot, public health matters, etc. It would be maybe very, very important to limit your searches to a certain period. For example, if we want to talk about COVID-19, we will only limit our content to 2020 and 2021 because not much content is then relevant from prior to that, right? Not a lot of research was done about the novel coronavirus prior to 2020 or 2019 for that matter. So you can just play around. So start year. So let's say I would say I want to use, for example, we're in 2021 now. So let's use 2016 and then 2021, and I click submit. And I have now reached 756 results. Okay, so that again has helped me to funnel down my searches even more. And then from there, I can then start to establish or to evaluate my search results eventually. So by just starting to read the actual title of the articles or the book, articles in this case, right? Seeing whether or not, okay, are they close? Do I recognize some of the terms in the article title itself? You can also immediately jump straight to it, right? But I would say, first of all, before you go there, there's one or two more things I would like to highlight. First is actually to indicate, for example, if you have not unchecked this box, what you might see still here is some articles or some book chapters or whatever, they were not subscribed or not purchased. You can see a yellow color padlock sign, which means that content itself is hidden behind a paywall. You can still go ahead and go inside, like I said, but you will be limited to what you can see in terms of only probably the abstract and a little bit about the introduction side itself. Then there is this other icon that says clearly open access. So do not be afraid. Open access just means it's completely freely available to the public, regardless of your affiliation to the university. So just go ahead, masuk saja, boleh download, boleh digunakan, tak ada masalah. The next feature the last feature I want to point out here is actually the RSS feed. So balik kepada di mana tadi saya tunjukkan macam nak create profile sendiri dalam SpringerLink, how you want to create your own profile. If you have done so, right, and you played around with your search words, operators, customize your search, play around with discipline, subdiscipline, you look at it for quite a long time already, and you're very confident, okay, I have arrived at a body of content that is extremely relevant to me and what I want for literature review, right? So how do I make sure that I save this so that I don't have to do this all over again, because you probably spend, I don't know, a better part of half an hour doing it, and you've played around with different keywords and you want to make sure you remember this and it sticks to this. So you can actually sign up for this RSS feed. Just click on it, and if you have a profile, that profile is linked to a email, right? Every time a new edition of an article that is associated with the keywords and the refined search that you have done here through the filters is added to the platform, you will get an email notification that, okay, so dear so-and-so, hi Kent, in your email, Kent, this author has published an article in this paper, and this is the journal article, and that this particular article is relevant to your last refined search that you had saved the RSS feed on, right? And therefore, right, you set that notification on your email, immediately you'll be brought back here because it gives you a link to be redirected here, and then you can continue your search without having to redefine or play around with that all over again. So the whole purpose of this is just to make your life easier, and also to make it do your literature review exercise a little bit more efficient and effective. So that's the other function and feature. If you wanted to download the entire list here, so for example, if you're doing some reference, you're doing your references for your manuscript or your thesis or whatever, you can entire list in a CSV file. Just open it up in Excel, arrange the columns properly, and there you go. You can actually do that, or just take the file, upload it into a reference manager. So things like BibTeX, what else? Mendeley, ReadCube, etc. And then you can actually do it for you that way as well. So it's just additional features, not something that most people will play with, but in case you are very serious about the work you have done so far, so creating your how you say your customized search thus far, and you don't want to waste it, all the effort you put in, then you can utilize this functionality here. So after all said and done, like I said, my advice is typically to make sure that you get this to a very reasonable number. I have learned from many, maybe more senior researchers, that it's probably better to get it between 50 to 100 so that you can actually take the time to read those 50 to 100 papers in the full text to really know, okay, after 100, maybe I remove 50% from that, then the remaining 50 are based on relevance. Okay, these are extremely relevant, then it's relevant, and then maybe slightly irrelevant in terms of the portion of results. But that helps you in doing your literature review and your referencing in a smart way. So next is actually going into the content itself. So let's take the opportunity to do that right now. I'll avoid using the open access one because I want to give you a better understanding of what a subscribed paper would look like. So I'm going to take this one, thermophysical properties of, I don't know what that is, metal matrix reinforced with TIC ceramic particles. So it's just an article name. It's an article name. This is a little bit of like the small text, the first paragraph of the article. And you can actually go straight to the article just by clicking on it or actually downloading the PDF. So here we are. When you click on this, is the home page of the article itself. So remember, an article is an individual document paper within one issue of a particular journal. Right. So if you're a new student, you're not familiar with these terminologies, I guess you might be a little confused, but I try my best to explain the differences. Right. So this article is a research paper. So it's a manuscript submitted by the authors, and the authors are named over here. The name of the author with a little envelope at the side is the corresponding author. So it was the author who had done the submissions and were replying to the peer reviewers and the editors when they were submitting this paper. And if you were to communicate, wanted to ask questions to this team of authors, researchers, you would write naturally to the corresponding author. Like again, the name with the envelope at the side of it. If you click on it, sometimes it will redirect you to the ORCID ID profile of the researcher. If they had registered one, most of the time they do, then you can find that researchers' contact information over there, and then you can, start your collaboration that way. You can also view the other publications on SpringerLink itself from the same author. So sometimes this is a useful feature because you might have again done your effort, done your homework to do your literature review, and then you will realize that a lot of maybe a certain high percentage of the papers that you are narrowing on seem to be coming from a small group of people. And these are likely the subject matter experts of the world. So they are the leading researchers in that area that you are focusing in. And if you see that name again and again and again, it just gives you more affirmation in the sense that you are going down the right path, because you're looking at content from people again who are showing up again and again and again. So it's consistent, and that consistency helps to support your train of thought that you're looking at. And therefore, if you want to see more papers from that author, you can just use this function by view other publications from the author itself. So in this case, this author so far only has one paper with us in SpringerLink, but it depends again for different authors, so you get different results. So again, this is an original paper published in 19th of October this year, not very long ago, only 10 days ago, something like that, in the journal called MRS Advances. If you wanted to know more about the journal itself, which I will go after this, you can just click on this link. It will bring you one step back, which is go to the journal level rather than the article level. All right. There's also this quick cite this article function, which I think you click it, scroll all the way to the bottom, and there is this download the citation button, or you can just use the DOI, for example, and you can take that file and just upload it into your reference manager program. Again, I think that things like Mendeley and ReadCube, it should automatically do that for you based on the metadata itself. You can also just download a copy of the PDF and throw it into that program, just copy and paste it. And I think it can also do the same function. But before we see the downloaded copy, I want to show you what a live version of an article looks like. And what you're seeing here is called the HTML or live version, for example. It means that you have to be connected to the internet in order to see this copy. Obviously, we've been browsing through the internet browser right now. But there are some slight differences between this and the downloaded copy, right? Number one is you will notice that in my particular screen, I'm using a 14-inch laptop, by the way, and the way that the layout of the document is as such. If you are using a tablet, which is, I would imagine, is smaller in size, or even your handphone for that matter, you would see the layout in a slightly different way, whereby it maximizes the screen acreage. So betapa besar screen kamu berdasarkan device yang kamu guna, tak kisahlah laptop ke, desktop ke, handphone ke, mobile device ke, anything. A live HTML version has the ability to adapt its layout in order to make it more easy to read on whichever device that you're utilizing. Then it also has the functionality to quickly jump from one section to another, which I think is quite useful, especially again, if you are quick reading, you're just wanting to, okay, I want to read abstract, little bit of introduction, jump straight to the conclusion or discussion, just to see, again, correct or not? Is this something that I should keep or something I should discard from my literature review in that sense? So that's quite easy. The other advantage of the HTML version is that you get to see the images in usually its full size. All right. So in terms of the actual file that was submitted by the authors themselves for the publication of this article, you would see the full version of that image in its full glory, meaning depending what, I mean, if it's a very detailed image, right? Again, very important for things, maybe in things like in subjects like veterinary science or biology or medicine or whatnot. For example, you're looking at a microscopic slide, the images become very important, especially when it comes to things like color, right? And you would then be able to see that original image that was submitted by the researchers themselves who sent in this manuscript. So that's one of the advantage. You can also, there's also a, how you call it, a quick pane filter to see where are all the images in the article itself, not just scrolling one by one. You can see the full size, like I said. So this is the whole image, the actual thing that was submitted. And in times, detail is very important, right? Especially if you want to reutilize the image for your purposes. It's better that to get this format rather than utilizing a screen capture from a PDF file, for example. So that's one separate advantage, right? And if you scroll to the bottom, and you can see all of the different references that were done, utilized for this paper and listed out by the authors themselves. So they include links to inside and outside of SpringerLink. So in case they, they refer to, they reference another paper that is not a Springer paper, for example, the links are also here. You would then automatically click on those hyperlinks and be redirected to that database or whatnot. Whether or not you have access to that particular article from a different database, it really depends on, again, your university library's access rights. Okay. Then one of the last things to really share is actually just share this article, pun intended, where you can actually take this link, just get shareable link, copy it, and you can share this material with actually anyone in the world that does not necessarily have subscription access to the content. So why are we doing this? We're doing this in the spirit of open science and open research. That means, for example, if you have a co-collaborator from a different university, uh-oh, my mouse has died, a different university that may not necessarily have access to your this article that you're looking at, you can actually share that with them using the shared article, how you call it, that link there. So whenever somebody who has this URL, when they open it, they will be redirected to this page again. They can see the full text, but they cannot download a copy of it. Right? So basically what you're doing is you're giving them temporary but complementary access to the content, just so that, for example, among a group of researchers, everyone has equal access rights. Right? Now we move to the downloadable copy. So just click on download PDF. So depending on your browser, you will either immediately download the copy for you onto your hard drive or your desktop, or in my case, my browser gives me a preview, then I can manually download or print. So this is a DRM-free document. So if you're not familiar with the term DRM, it means digital rights management, free. So for what in practical sense, what that means, for example, I can actually select the text on the document itself, on the PDF. I can copy it. I can paste it into my Word file where I'm doing, or EndNote if I'm doing writing my own manuscript, and it's a lot easier to paraphrase in that sense. So again, it's supporting giving functionality to the users so that it helps with improving the effectiveness and the efficiency of you doing your own literature review or manuscript writing, right? It's also not a plain Jane PDF in a sense, because as you can tell, there are colors here, all right? And there are also, I got hyperlinks. That means or you can see all the links within the document. So particularly for the references are all active. And there is a lot of metadata embedded into the PDF itself. So if you, again, download a copy of this, uploaded it into your EndNote, your Mendeley Readcube, any of those things, the metadata embedded in the PDF will provide lots of added functionality in terms of what you'll be doing with your manuscript writer. So things like referencing can be done for you automatically, the hyperlinks, the images and whatnot. And you can cross-search other papers from perhaps within the same subject matter in that sense. So, but that is a story for another day, and you probably have to attend another training for those tools as well. Another thing I want to to highlight is that remember the images that I showed you earlier. So for example, why I say it's better to take the image or utilize the image from the live version rather than the PDF. As you can see, although this is DRM free, but the images are still just images in a PDF. It's not much that can be done in that respect. And you imagine if you're cropping this, so if you're a lecturer, for example, you want to utilize this image in your next PowerPoint slide for your class or your tutorial, taking a screen capture from here and then expanding it across an entire PowerPoint may not necessarily, may jeopardize the clarity of the image. So you might start to see pixelation and extent. So it's not the best to do it using a PDF. But alternatively, what you can also do, because it's DRM free, right? You can download a copy. You can actually share this copy with your students if you so feel free to do so. Or you can give them that share article link that I showed you earlier, or you can just basically give the URL to ask your students to redirect. There's no worry about copyright infringement because that has been taken care by your library. All of the subscribed content are licensed in that sense. That means as long as it's utilized for educational or teaching or research purposes, it's all well within the copyright boundaries that has been signed and taken care of by the library. So, you can do so. And the whole purpose again of doing this is to just make life easier for you. You can also print out. So for example, if you're going to utilize maybe a particular page of a book or a chapter or an article that you want to utilize it as a material for an upcoming tutorial, you can actually do so because you can, you can download a copy of it, or you can print a copy of it, any number of copies, any pages, or the entire text itself. So you are not limited by that sense, and everything is still being tracked by the library anyway. So not to worry about that. Oh, so unfortunate, my mouse has died halfway. Going back. Okay, so as what you've seen, I have demonstrated what a journal article looks like in terms of an actual document. So if you were to grab a hold of an entire journal in physical journal, if you've been to the library, then this is just one paper or a few pages within the entire journal. To go to the journal itself, like I mentioned earlier, you can just click on a quick link here. So this journal is called MRS Advances, and this now means we are in the home page of the journal itself, not just one article within the journal. So MRS here says Materials Research Society. So this is one of those society-based journals that I mentioned earlier. And there are a few important features or points that I like to point out for you. Especially when you're doing things like looking for home for your manuscripts. If, for example, if you're a budding researcher or young researcher and you're looking for opportunities to publish your paper, of course, we welcome them very much here in any of our journal portfolios. But one thing to make sure is, for example, for you, probably you want to identify what is the quality of the journal itself. And there are a few matrices you can use to do your evaluation. The first of which is actually to identify the editorial board. So this is a two-way, a double-edged sword thing kind of situation where, for example, in the past, when you're doing your literature review, if you're again recognize there are several names that keep popping up again and again and again, then what you can tend to feel strongly about is that you ought to be following that person, because that person could be a very prominent member of the research community doing research in that area itself. And all our editors and editor-in-chiefs for all our journals are, practicing or professional academicians themselves. They are not working for Springer Nature in that sense, and they're therefore because of the third part, because of that disassociation in terms of relationship with the commercial aspect of the publisher themselves, they then help to maintain the quality and the authenticity of the content that is published within the journal, actually, right? So if you see a few of these editorial names, associate editors, chief editors, and you recognize them, one thing I can say is that if you're writing a paper in that subject matter, this is one good clue to show that maybe your paper also could find a home here in this journal itself. Going back, right? The next thing to really take note of is the aims and scope of a journal. So just use the aims and scope link and really carefully read through what they are. So every journal has a very, very different, slightly unique, aims and scope. They might have a very similar name, There might even be situations where there are the two different journals with very, very similar names are out there. But please read the aims and scope, because they tell you very specifically what they do accept, what kind of papers they accept, review papers, original papers, clinical trials, whatever, etc. And what are the topics that are being discussed in that paper. So if you're a researcher, an author who wants to look for a home for your paper, this is where you come to identify whether or not your manuscript and what's being discussed in your manuscript matches what the editors are looking for in terms of papers that they want to publish in their journal itself, right? Likewise, if you are a student, for example, or you're a researcher looking for content, doing your literature review, the aims and scope also helps to tell you, okay, what are the topics being discussed? And if they match what you're looking for, then beyond that one article that you probably arrive at this journal from, you should also be looking at the other articles that are being published in this journal itself. So that helps. Then you can see if there are any journal updates, for example, if they are calling for any special issues, or they are discussing the next month's issue is purely on a particular unique area and we're calling for papers, or they're going to have a proceeding and they're inviting people to submit, etc., etc. So you can get information from there. This text here just gives you a very general explanation of what the journal is. So I would still always say go back to the aims and scope. It's a little much more detail in that sense. There are submission guidelines and funding fees and funding information if this is not but especially if this is an open access paper. I believe this is a hybrid journal, if I'm not mistaken. Let me check. Yes. So the publishing model is hybrid. That means although it is a subscription-based journal, you can also submit your individual manuscript as an open access paper. And of course, with being open access, there comes some article processing charges. And a good way to find out a little bit about that, or if you want to look for an exemption, is by reading up on the fees and funding section. There's also ways to contact the journal. Again, it's usually through a central person. And submission guidelines help to tell you, for example, what are the number of words accepted in the manuscript, how many pages, if you have images, can they accept color, what's the size, format, etc., etc. So it's really, really important to read all of this first and to ensure that your manuscript is matching, or you have to adapt your manuscript to match the requirements of the paper before actually going to submit to the paper itself, because you want to prevent a situation whereby on a scientific basis, your paper matches with the requirement of the journal, but because on a technical standpoint, you fail to meet the requirements because you exceed the number of words or pages, and you do not want to wait what could be at times several months just to receive a rejection based on a technical standpoint, and therefore have to go back and then resubmit again before you even begin the peer review process. So very important to do that. Then ultimately, once you've done so, you can actually click on submit manuscript here, which will redirect you to a, what do you call it, a submission manager, essentially. So this is where you create again your username and profile. You have to do it here. And then you can track the progress of your submission and all of the replies that you get from the editor and also the peer reviewer in that sense is here, and you can track all the way. Once you've been accepted, once your manuscript has been allocated a DOI, right, a unique identifier, you can also obtain that through here. So this is where you go back and forth throughout the peer review process. So all that is good. Let's go back again. So back here we are still in the homepage of the journal itself, and this particular example is how you say doesn't necessarily tell you the speed of submission, but I'll try to find another one for you. But while we're still here, you can also see important information like, for example, abstract and indexing. So I think in Malaysia, sangat penting, terutamanya bagi student, master dan PhD. When you want to graduate, you must, I think there's a requirement for it to be published in, not just in Q1 or Q2, for example, but in a journal that is indexed in a particular index. So either ISI or Scopus. I think that's the requirement in Malaysia. I'm unaware if it has changed recently. And how you identify that is actually through this information here. So as you can see, this one is indexed by Scopus. And but not necessarily by ISI over here. It's like what I can see. So I'll try to find another one. Let me just very, very quickly. Oh, sorry, wrong button. Very quickly try to find a different journal where I can show you different instances. Here, let's try this one. So this is a Journal of Nanoparticle Research. Okay. So this one actually provides a little bit more information about the metrics of the journal in terms of its performance. So for example, in terms of popularity, you can see that this particular journal itself was downloaded, individual articles, not the entire journal, was downloaded more than 500,000 times in the year 2020. Just shows you the popularity and how many potential eyes globally could be looking at your paper if you publish in this journal. But very important as well are things like impact factor, 2 and 5 year. But again, speaking from a publisher standpoint, I'm supposed to tell you that impact factors should not be the #1 requirement for you to select a journal. Instead of solely aiming for very high impact factor, we believe that it's much more important for you to select papers that have high relevancy to your manuscript rather than necessarily impact factor. So for example, impact factor can be affected by several things. The journal itself could have had a very poor year last year because maybe the editors were too busy and therefore they were not accepting many papers, and therefore performance could have dropped. In that sense, that affects the impact factor itself. And also, I mean, just looking at it from a perspective of you as a researcher, right? Somebody who is looking for content, I would rather read something that is more relevant from a journal that's more relevant, that has a lower impact factor, rather than a journal purely based on its impact factor merit, but may not necessarily have a strong relevancy to the manuscript itself. So if you're really looking for more eyes on your document, on your manuscript, it's better to find something that is extremely relevant, regardless of the performance of the impact factor. Impact factor is also affected by age of the journal. So if it's a very new journal, for example, less than 2 years old, more often times you will not have an impact factor there. It doesn't mean the quality of the papers that are being published inside there are poor. Then next, I guess is also good. One very important information for students is the speed to publication. So as you can see, this particular journal is relatively quite fast, I would say, and every journal is different, even though all journals under Springer Nature, for example, have different speed of publications. So this one says that it takes 26 days, relatively fast, less than a month, from the first submission all the way to first decision. So that means submit, first answer yes or no. And if no, why, for example? No, because technically your paper failed to meet its requirements just because of technical reasons, but scientifically, on a scientific basis, it's still good. So resubmit, but make these changes. Then there is also no, because it's not relevant to our paper. It's not a kind of journal that it's looking for. They might suggest you to move to a different, internally, there is a process to move your paper from one journal to another journal through still within the Springer Nature family of journals. And then maybe the third rejection is purely for reasons like, for example, there is detection of possible negligence, more research needs to be done. Maybe there's a presence of possibility of plagiarism in that sense. So the editors will work out with you and try to assess that. But then no. So first reaction, first answer, 26 days. But from rejection and then acceptance, peer review, all the way until publication, takes roughly 143 days. So for those who are planning to graduate, that's probably a very important number to look at, especially when you're planning your acceptance right before your next graduation ceremony or deadline. So of course, if you require X number of manuscripts to be submitted in a certain time, you would naturally need to look at whether or not, if you submitted to journal A, would it meet that time frame or not? Or if no, then how much longer do you have to wait? It also gives you an idea how fast to expect a response from the journals, from the editors themselves, because often and not, a lot of young researchers who had probably not a lot of experience submitting manuscripts before, they tend to think that, oh, nobody has replied me in a week, so does that mean they have lost my application, or is nobody looking at it? So that really depends. So in this particular journal, 26 days, an average of 26 days, wait 26 days before worrying whether or not whether you get a reply or not. It can be a little bit longer, I guess, or it can also be much quicker, but the average is 26 days. So that helps to give you an understanding of when you should really chase, or should you be worried, for example, if it goes beyond the average waiting time. Just below that, you can see that there is the latest issue. So for this journal, Journal of Nanoparticle Research, it's currently at volume 23 in issue 11, published the November 2021 publication. And you can see all of the latest articles here. Again, look out for either the padlock or open access sign to make sure that you would be able to access the entire article itself. And over here, I wanted to say, to check whether or not we could see any ISI publication. So yes, this one has JCR here. So this one is indexed in JCR or ISI for that matter, and also in Scopus. So naturally, I think if you're submitting in this paper, for example, as long as you're looking for those requirements, it is then listed over here, and you should feel safe to publish in it as well. Okay. So Mabel, before I go to probably the last portion of the trading, can I just check if there are any questions so far?
Yep, there is one question so far. And the question is actually, I think it is referring to the RSS feed, because the question is about, is it the same as alert? So I think it refers to RSS feed.
Yes, it is. So yeah. Yeah, it is. It is basically an alert. So it's just called an RSS feed over here. On other platforms, databases, it might be called an alert. So it basically alerts you if there is a new entry to your search results. So for example, in this one that we're looking at right now, this result is 6802. So if I'm following this journal by using the RSS feed just for this journal, then every time there's a new issue, a new article published in this journal, I will get an alert through my email that there are new additions or new papers added to this journal itself. So yes, it's an alert.
Okay.
Thanks,
and
Maria.
then thank you,
Anything
Ken.
else?
And then
somebody raised a
yeah,
hand.
there's Norachula, do you mind to turn on your mic and ask a question? Hello?
Hi, Norakila. Ada soalan ke? Oh, okay. Maybe
by accident.
Mispress. Not sure. Yeah, no worries. Don't worry. We're not. Jangan risau. I'm not calling you out for no reason. Don't worry. It happens to everybody, including myself. In fact, just yesterday,
there is only one question.
I accidentally pressed the raise my hand question. Okay, great. I'll move on. So, but thanks anyway for that one question. So I'll move on now to we're going towards the end already. I think we have about 15 more minutes. Very quickly, I want to show the ebook section. So by doing so, I'll use the different way of searching for content. And instead of using the search bar, I'll use the jump to ebooks very quickly. As you can see, just press books, right? And then you will still get back the same results page. As you can see, you then again should uncheck the box. In Springer, as you can see, there's 285,000 titles, from very, very old titles back in like Einstein era. So 1800s titles, and we're constantly adding older and older archives as we digitize our archive collection. So Springer has been around for a long time. Yeah, it's a long time. And so we have actually been publishing books for hundreds of years. As we continue to add a lot of those archives, you will see this number growing. On top of that, also, we publish new titles every year, around 10,000, 10 to 15,000 ebooks on average for the last, I think, 10 years or so, 5 years at least, we've been publishing. So you're going to see that number keep growing every day, right? So uncheck that box. Again, refine your search. Again, I'm going to keep it to book, but you can see that conference proceeding and reference works are still here. Why? Because like I mentioned in the very beginning, conference proceedings, in theory, they're like journal articles, but they were submitted to a conference for presenting or for a special issue. In SpringerLink, they are in the book format. They are published in the book format. In different databases, they might be published in a journal format. So just some slight caveat over there. All right. They are also, why we publish them in a book format is because they usually can be part of a series. and therefore they can be recognized as an index, which is, I believe, in terms of a publication trend, is something that is in demand at the moment. So you, for example, as an author, when you submit your paper as a manuscript to a conference, it may not be your full research. You're not completed your research 100% yet at that stage, but you wanted to submit to a conference to get feedback, right? Which is one of the main reasons you do those kind of things. So one of the advantage of doing it, publishing that conference proceeding in a book format, is so that it can be indexed as well. And so yeah, just a what do you call it, trivia over there. And also reference works. So again, reference works are like large encyclopedias, handbooks, manuals, those kind of titles. Yeah, and why when I click books, they still show up, is because they are technically in a book format. So I'll take the next the most what do you call it, popular subject area for UMP is probably engineering, if I'm not mistaken. All right, and then I will limit it to, let's take a sub-discipline that is less popular. So let's say mechatronics, let's say. All right. So there are 232 books here, and then mechatronics, right? And consider as books or reference works. Take English only, unless you speak German, of course, then no harm in there. But I would then try an actual book. So you can see it says book. This is a 2022 title, so do not be alarmed. We sometimes publish books ahead of schedule, but they were originally intended to be released in 2022, but it's already released early because they finished the process early, but it's still classified as a copyright year 2022. So as you can see the front cover of Springer ebook. It's quite standard. I think a lot of our front covers are quite systematic. Oh, sorry, what do you call it? Straightforward in that sense. The title is here. You can see the author and their affiliations. If it's an edited title, meaning it's usually a collection of different authors submitting individual chapters, and then an editor combines all of them into one subject, one title, and then it's called an edited book. This one is called a manuscript. What do you call it? Not manuscript. It's called monograph, meaning it's the entire book is written by one or a few individual authors themselves. You can see a slight description, short description about what the book is about. But if you wanted to read in greater detail, you can see that this is usually found on the back hand side, the cover of the hardcover of the book on the back. So I mean, imagine the last time you read a real hardcover book. On the last page on the cover on the back, you will find a little bit more like a synopsis, basically what's been discussed in the book itself. And then here are those keywords. So remember when I did the keyword search experiment, or how you play around with the search bar, these are the keywords that had been tagged by the author themselves about this book. So if you had used some of these keywords when using the search bar function, and you had maybe hit 2 or 3 of them, then definitely this book itself would show up in the search results, right? So that's how we do the tagging, or the keyword tagging for each and every one of the materials. You can see again information about the authors, who they are, where they're from, which university are they associated with. This is you can see the ISBNs, the publishing information, and the DOI, in case you're doing again citations. But the most important thing to point for a book is that books being books, they are divided into chapters. And for our books, you can download either the entire book in PDF or EPUB, or you can download individual chapters through PDF. So you don't have to download the entire book, and you can download individual chapters. So because more often than not, books are like usually discussing a large topic, a large general topic with different chapters, maybe being more specific about subtopics within them. So when you're reading a book, often you don't need the information from the entire book. You just want information from 1 or 2 chapters. In fact, certain paragraphs within just one chapter. So you can actually download individual chapters. You just click on them. So you can read them live here, HTML version. This until quite recently wasn't available. You had to read via PDF, but now there are also HTML versions, right? And you can download the book in EPUB or PDF. So I think this chapter 3, right? I think. No, this is the entire book. Sorry. So I've clicked on download the entire book here. Yes, for 404 pages. And I guess if you're using things like mobile data or your internet connection is not great, you probably don't want to download such a large file. So then it'll be better to just go back and to download the individual chapter itself. So you can just download one chapter, which is more feasible or much more easier to handle in that sense. Don't have to waste data. Then there is also the search bar feature within the book itself. So if you're looking for certain terms and you don't want to read in 404 pages, you can actually use the search bar feature here to help you search within the book itself. Right? So in actual fact, in terms of the actual PDF itself, it's exactly the same as how you see a journal article. It's just that this is a book divided into chapters. Also has metadata, has the hyperlinks, all of it inside there. But images, as I said, is probably better to use the HTML version in that sense. Okay, so that's the gist of it. So books are one whole title, and then you got individual chapters. Journals are one whole journal with different issues. So that's why they're called periodicals. So they are published periodically within a year. Some of them are once a month, some of them are twice a year, some of them are in every quarter of the year. And within each of those issues, you have the individual articles within them. So that's the, what do you call it, the structural difference between a book and a journal, especially for if you are a young student and you're not familiar with the differences. Again, for books, I would say if you're looking for fundamental information, so usually information that is been established and curated, so you can look at books when you want to learn the breadth about a certain subject. But if you wanted to know, for example, the cutting edge of that particular science, then it's often very important to utilize journal article resources for that matter. So you can stay up to date on where the edge of the science of discovery is at that point, so that when you are doing your own research, you're obviously trying to push that edge even further by relying on what others have discovered in the past, so that you can build on that science and then make your own contribution to the body of knowledge in that matter. Okay, and that basically concludes the training itself, I think, Mabel. So yeah, I think we're okay.
Yeah, thank you, Ken.
5 minutes early in case we have any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Ken. I think your presentation and the demonstration on our platforms are very, very clear, because so far I haven't got any more questions. So if you have so if you have questions, just raise your hand and unmute yourself and ask Ken the question. So we still have 5 minutes, so feel free to ask us any question, not just related to the platforms, but any other things related to Springer Nature, or even about publishing, how we support you in the future. You are more than welcome to give us your advice as well.
Yes, please. Yeah, and also kalau nak boleh tanya dalam bahasa Malaysia, tak ada masalah. Saya boleh faham, saya orang KL. And yeah, seperti mana yang Mabel mention tadi, kalau ada soalan bukan saja tentang SpringerLink, tetapi mengenai syarikat Springer Nature, publisher, boleh tanya saya. If you have any questions about publication, marketing related, or funding related, article processing charges, open access, we can do our best to help you answer them. If not, we can always get an expert within Springer Nature to help address that question that you have. So go ahead, either leave your question in the chat box, or if not, I guess I could probably leave my email address. Just 1 second.
Yeah.
Maybe I stop sharing my slides. Stop sharing first. All right. Put my email somewhere. Okay.
Yeah. Actually, the slides today and the recording of the webinar will be shared by the library. Avida, you raised hand. Yeah, thank you.
Hi Ken, Springer ada platform lain tak untuk open access?
Ada. Jawapannya ada. So dia just berdasarkan subjek mana terutamanya dan dalam portfolio mana. So contohnya kita ada lagi satu database yang dinamakan BMC. That one is purely on the clinical sciences, clinical medicine, research in pharmaceutical sciences, etc. That entire portfolio is completely 100% open access. Tapi seperti yang saya tunjukkan tadi dalam SpringerLink, ada juga 600 lebih journal yang pure open access. And you can find out information about that from the individual journals by going into the individual journals and learning about the open access aspect of that journal. 98% on, I'm scared to say 100% because I cannot be sure, but I can say very close to 100% of our other journals are hybrid based. That means although they are subscription based journals, they also can publish individual open access articles within that journal itself. For the charges, please refer to every journal's information, like how saya tunjukkan tadi. Just go into the fees and funding, and you can learn what is the article publication charges for you, or sometimes if there are any arrangement between that university and Springer Nature, then there might be some special discounts or specific fixed fees, or if you want to request for you don't have to pay for the article publication charges. What are the requirements? How do you submit your application for doing so? Then I think one biggest news in terms of from our publisher standpoint, we have started to accept open access publications on our Nature journals portfolio, which was previously never allowed. The Nature branded journals used to be 100% subscription based. That means we did not accept any open access papers because we wanted to maintain the high standard of peer review, which means we did not want to allow Nature journals to be affected by the commercial aspect of publication. And therefore, you can see why Nature journals dia punya impact factor ataupun dia punya ranking sangat-sangat tinggi untuk every one of the journals, even the newly launched one. So that is the biggest news I can say. Now, if any author can also proceed to, if they wanted to publish open access in some of the Nature branded journals as well. So on nature.com is also available. I hope that answers your question. Thank you. So if there are any more questions, I think we're sharp at 12 o'clock. Are there any more, Mabel?
No, I don't see any more question in the chat box, and okay. No one else has raised a hand. Okay, if there's no more question, thank you once again for your attendance, as well as thank you for the UMP Library support in organizing this platform training with us. Yeah. And we will collaborate and design what other topics in the future, which will be beneficial to you. After the webinar, there is a survey, so please fill in and help us understand what you think about the webinar today. And also you can fill in the topics for the coming webinars. There is an e-certificate, which will be sent to you later. So thank you for all your participation. And hopefully we are able to see each other in person very soon. So stay safe. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.